Well, it was overwhelming because I'd always loved her singing anyway. I mean, what a voice she had. I mean, at that time, nobody could out-sing her.
In 1973, Dolly Parton sat crying at her kitchen table at 3 a.m. She had just made a decision that would change everything. That night, she wrote "I Will Always Love You" in one sitting. But what happened next shocked the music world. A legendary superstar wanted to record her song. His demand was so outrageous that Dolly said no through tears. Years later, someone else turned that same song into the biggest hit ever. The person who made Dolly millions wasn't who anyone expected. This secret story reveals how one midnight breakdown created music history. She was born on January 19, 1946, in a one-room log cabin on Locust Ridge in Sevier County, Tennessee, surrounded by the dense woods of the Smoky Mountains. That cabin had no electricity, no plumbing, just creaky floorboards and thin walls that barely held off the winter cold. At night, she and her siblings used mason jars filled with fireflies as lanterns. Her father, Robert Lee Parton, born March 22, 1921, worked as a sharecropper. The land didn't belong to him. The tools didn't either. He paid debts with whatever he had, even cornmeal. When Dolly was born, he couldn't afford the doctor's fee. He handed over a sack of cornmeal as payment. That moment left such a deep mark on her that she later wrote a song to honor the man who delivered her. She was the fourth of 12 children born to Avie Lee Owens Parton, who had all her babies before she turned 35. That house was bursting with life and noise and barely enough food to go around. But Dolly would always say they were rich in love. Avie Lee, born October 5, 1923, was just 16 when she married Robert. Life gave her little rest. She bore child after child in a cabin barely large enough to breathe in. But even in the middle of that struggle, she sang mountain ballads, gospel songs, lullabies older than the hills themselves. Her voice floated through the cabin like smoke from the fireplace, wrapping the children in warmth when their stomachs were empty and their toes were numb. She didn't just sing, she taught. She passed down melodies that had no sheet music, only memory. She showed Dolly that music could be more than noise. It could be survival. And when Dolly wrote her first melody, it was Avie Lee who wrote it down. That simple act, a mother putting her daughter's words on paper, started everything. When Dolly was 9, her baby brother, Larry Gerald, died just 4 days after he was born. The family was shaken. Dolly, just a child herself, felt the loss in a way she didn't know how to explain, so she sang. She began writing songs not just to remember, but to understand. One of her earliest creations was about a corncob doll her mother had stitched together with scraps. It was called Little Tiny Tasseltop. It wasn't about death, but it was about love and making something out of nothing. Her mother saw the spark in that song. She wrote the lyrics down again. Even in the midst of grief, Avie Lee kept reminding her daughter that her words mattered. They were poor in a way that's hard to explain. Not just no money, no diapers, no toys, no shoes that fit. Robert bartered livestock for staples like salt and flour. Avie Lee boiled old rags to use as diapers. She turned feed sacks into dresses. They hunted squirrel and turtle, frogs and groundhogs. Dolly remembered all of it. She said they never ate possum because her daddy thought it was like eating a rat, but everything else was fair game. One Christmas, Dolly wanted a walking, talking doll. Her father handed her baby Randy and said, "Here's one better than everybody's. This one walks and talks and pees and everything." That was the kind of humor and heartbreak that shaped her. At age 8, everything changed. Her uncle Bill Owens gave her a real guitar. Before that, she strummed on makeshift instruments, pieces of wood and busted strings. Uncle Bill was a songwriter himself, a man who would go on to write over 800 songs. He saw something in his niece. He didn't just give her a guitar, he gave her belief. She played until her fingers bled. He told her to keep going. He stood beside her at every early performance. Years later, when he died in 2021, Dolly wrote, "I wouldn't be here if he hadn't been there." He stood behind her on stage with his red Gretsch guitar, and she never forgot it. When she was 10, she was already performing on Knoxville TV, yodeling and singing Jimmie Rodgers songs. But even then, the business side showed its teeth. A promoter paid her mother directly, skipping over Dolly completely. That was her first taste of exploitation. She learned fast. She started paying attention to money, to contracts, to control. By age 11, she wrote Puppy Love about a school crush. She performed it on the Cass Walker Farm and Home Hour and got $3 per show. Gold Band Records released it on April 6, 1959, with Girl Left Alone on the B-side. She and her grandmother took a 30-hour bus ride from Tennessee to Louisiana to record it. It didn't hit the charts, but it played on the radio. The reviews were kind, but people laughed at her patched clothes and big hair. That sting stayed with her. She finished high school in 1964, the first in her family to do it. The very next day, she hitchhiked to Nashville with $33. She slept in her car, wrote over 200 songs, and got rejected again and again. But she stayed. Her songs got better. Her grit got sharper. She signed a demo deal with Gold Band. Nothing was easy. Everything moved slow, but she didn't stop. At some point, her health gave out. Malnutrition caught up with her, and during a performance, she collapsed. Her body just couldn't keep up. The doctors said it was a lack of nutrients. Her family had done the best they could, but it wasn't enough. That scare changed her. She knew then that success wasn't just about fame. It was about never being that hungry again. In secret, on May 30th, 1966, Dolly married Carl Dean in Ringgold, Georgia. Her mother and a pastor were the only witnesses. Her management didn't know. They feared marriage would hurt her appeal. Carl kept out of the spotlight. He didn't need it. He supported her quietly, privately, always. That same year, she released Dumb Blonde, which made it onto the charts in 1967. That song was the start of something. And then came the call from Porter Wagoner. She was 21 when she joined The Porter Wagoner Show in 1967. The show reached 3.5 million viewers every week. At first, his audience didn't accept her. But by 1968, everyone knew her name. Their duet, The Last Thing on My Mind, hit the top 10 and won them the CMA Vocal Group of the Year award. But behind that success, things weren't easy. Wagoner pushed her hard. He limited her solo releases. He docked her pay for looking too flashy. He made her uncomfortable. He made advances. He didn't want to let her go. They toured more than 200 days a year, sold out venues, packed buses, grueling hours. On stage, they smiled. Off stage, they fought. She started writing songs for other artists. One of them, Put It Off Until Tomorrow, became a hit for Bill Phillips and earned her a Grammy nomination. That didn't sit well with Wagoner. By 1970, her solo track Joshua hit #1. She was proving she didn't need anyone's spotlight to shine. But Wagoner wasn't ready to lose her. In 1974, she left. He sued her for $3 million. Eventually, they settled. Years later, they reconciled and even recorded together again. In 1973, at 3 in the morning, Dolly Parton sat at her kitchen table with tears running down her face. She had made up her mind. She was going to leave Porter Wagoner. They had worked together for 7 years, 2 more than she promised. And things had turned cold. He was controlling. She was ambitious. They clashed. That night, she wrote, "I Will Always Love You," in a single sitting. The next morning, she played it for him, choking on her sobs as she sang. He listened quietly and told her it was the most beautiful song he had ever heard. He said she could leave, but only if he could produce the track. The song came out in June 1973, and by 1974, it hit #1 on the charts, her first solo #1. It made her independent overnight. She earned over $1 million in royalties from it. He earned nothing. But Porter didn't let go easily. In 1979, he filed a $3 million lawsuit, claiming he made her a star and deserved a cut of her earnings for life. Rumors flew. People whispered about an affair. Dolly didn't want a court battle. She paid him around $1 million to make it stop. Later, she said, "I made up my mind that if he could live with it, I could live without it." But she never stopped loving him. When he was dying of lung cancer in 2007, she went to his hospice bed. She held his hand and prayed with him. She was there when he died. She even performed at his Opry farewell. No matter the legal fights, she never let bitterness win. Just after she released the song in 1974, another shock came. Elvis Presley wanted to record it. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, called Dolly and said Elvis would sing it only if they got 50% of the publishing rights. That was the deal Parker always demanded. But Dolly said no. She cried the entire night after turning it down. Years later, she said, "I'm sorry, but I can't give you the publishing." It was one of the hardest decisions she ever made, but it paid off. In 1992, Whitney Houston's version made her more than $10 million. That one song made her one of the richest female songwriters in the world. Dolly later joked she could have bought Graceland with that money, but instead, she bought Nashville real estate. After leaving Porter, Dolly went solo with Fire. Her 1974 album, Just the Way I Am, proved she wasn't anyone's sidekick. Mule Skinner Blues hit number 3 on the country charts. Porter's show, once one of the top country programs, began to sink. Ratings dropped. He struggled to find another star. Meanwhile, Dolly had hit after hit. Jolene and I Will Always Love You came from that same era. The charts told the truth. Her leaving him was a blow he never recovered from. Jolene exploded on February 2, 1974, landing at number 1. The song was born from a real moment. A red-haired bank teller had a crush on Dolly's husband, Carl. He loved going to the bank. It became a running joke, but Dolly turned it into a desperate, aching plea. The name Jolene came from an 8-year-old fan with red hair and green eyes she once met at a concert. That girl's name stuck. The pain in the lyrics made it a timeless classic. In 2014, Jolene was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. But Dolly's soul didn't just come through in heartbreak songs. In 1971, she released Coat of Many Colors, which hit number 4 on the charts and got her first Grammy nomination. The story came from her own childhood. Her mother stitched a coat from scraps of rags, and though kids at school mocked her, Dolly wore it with pride. She wrote it on a tour bus using Porter's dry cleaning receipts. That coat became a symbol of her life, poor, tough, but full of love. Then, in 1977, she took a risk. Here You Come Again hit number 3 on the pop charts. It was her first big leap outside country music. Some fans felt betrayed, called her a sellout, but she didn't flinch. The album went gold by December 27, 1977. Selling over 500,000 copies before year's end. She won her first Grammy in 1978 for Best Female Country Vocal Performance. That song didn't just win charts, it rewrote her image. Big wigs, glittery gowns, a new era was beginning, and it worked. Soon, she would release 9 to 5 and Islands in the Stream. In 1980, Dolly entered Hollywood with 9 to 5, starring beside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. She played Dora Lee, a secretary battling harassment at work. The film made $103 million worldwide, becoming that year's top-grossing comedy. Dora Lee wasn't just a character, Dolly had lived it. She'd worked as a secretary once. The film's bold take on sexism hit home, and her performance turned her into a star beyond music. It sparked conversations across the country and later became a Broadway musical. Even more amazing, the title song was written in 15 minutes. She was frustrated with a lazy boss and started clicking her acrylic nails like a typewriter. That rhythm became the song's clock alarm intro. The song won 2 Grammys and an Oscar nomination. It topped both the country and pop charts. What she wrote in 15 minutes became a global anthem for working women. Then came The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas in 1982. Dolly starred beside Burt Reynolds. She re-recorded I Will Always Love You for it, and it hit number 1 again. But the film drew heat. The story centered around a Texas brothel. Some theaters refused to show it. Critics said it glorified prostitution. Dolly fired back, saying it exposed small-town corruption. Controversy didn't stop the movie from making money. Her mix of charm and grit turned it into another hit. not everything she touched turned to gold. In 1984, she starred in Rhinestone with Sylvester Stallone. It flopped. Made for $17 million, it barely crossed $30 million at the box office. Critics mocked it. Stallone didn't click with Dolly's improvisational style, and the chemistry fell flat. Still, her song, Tennessee Homesick Blues, reached the top 10. The experience was rough. It showed her that even she couldn't save every film, but it didn't stop her. By 1989, she was back on top with Steel Magnolias. She played Truvy, a warm-hearted beautician. The film earned $100 million worldwide. She acted alongside Julia Roberts, Sally Field, and Shirley MacLaine. Dolly was exhausted from endless touring but never showed it. She powered through filming and delivered one of her most beloved roles. The movie became a classic, and so did her performance. In 1986, she put $20 million of her own money into building Dollywood. She transformed an old theme park in Pigeon Forge into a 200-acre attraction near her hometown. It was risky. In 1988, floods hit the area and nearly bankrupted her, but she sold off assets and saved the park. Today, Dollywood employs over 5,000 people and draws more than 3 billion visitors. Its annual revenue sits somewhere between $100 million and $500 million. Her stake alone was worth about $165 million in 2021. In 2007, she launched Dolly Records. No big label, just her own money. The first release, Backwoods Barbie, came out in 2008 and hit number 17 on the Billboard 200. It sold 274,000 copies by 2020. The tour made $9 million from 64 shows. She said no to all major labels, wanting full control. Everyone thought she was crazy, but it worked. It became one of her proudest moves. Back in the 1980s, she also launched a beauty line and cookbook series that made $10 million a year. But in 1987, the stock market crashed. She lost $5 million from her investments. She had to sell a Tennessee mansion to recover. That scare taught her to spread her money out. After that, she focused more on real estate, music publishing, and Dollywood. She adapted fast. She always did. In 2000, she hosted Gay Day at Dollywood. The backlash was instant. The KKK sent her death threats. She didn't care. She said, "God loves all his children." That year, park attendance rose by 20%. She became a rare Southern voice for LGBTQ+ rights. She never backed down. Her 1987 TV variety show, Dolly, was a flop. It only lasted 24 episodes, but failure turned into fortune. She launched her own fragrance, Scent of a Memory, which became the seed of a $100 million merchandise empire. Perfumes, cosmetics, even cake mixes followed. The TV show failed, but her instincts didn't. Dolly Parton was never the kind of person to sit still when something needed fixing. In 1995, when she looked around her Tennessee hometown and saw how many kids grew up without books, she remembered her own father, how he couldn't read or write, and it broke her heart. That year, she started the Imagination Library, mailing free books to every child from birth to age 5. What began as a small-town dream grew into one of the largest literacy movements in the world. By June 2025, it had mailed over 284 million books across the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and Ireland. More than 3 million books now leave the warehouse each month, landing in the hands of children who might never otherwise own one. Dolly has poured $40 million of her own money into the program, with help from Penguin Random House, and her choices show her evolving vision. By 2025, 8 of the featured books were written or illustrated by Indigenous creators in Canada, and over 20 states were offering bilingual English and Spanish editions. Oregon even made it universal, giving every child under 5 a book every month. When her hometown flooded in 2000, Dolly's giving spirit turned from pages to people. Sevier County was underwater, and families lost everything, even their ancestors' graves. Dolly immediately donated $1 million and raised more through concerts. Through her foundation's My People's Fund, she handed out $1,000 a month to 900 families for 6 months. As donations poured in, She raised the total payout to $5,000 per family, distributing $12.5 million in all. It wasn't a loan or a grant with strings, it was trust. Researchers later found the approach actually stabilized families' finances faster than most government aid. Her giving didn't stop there. In the 1980s and 90s, Dolly looked at Sevier County's schools and saw too many dropouts. She launched a scholarship fund through the Dollywood Foundation that eventually gave over 10,000 students the chance to attend college. Back in the early 90s, she told every 7th and 8th grader she'd give them $500 if they made it to graduation. Dropouts fell from 35% to just 6%. By 2025, her foundation was offering $15,000 scholarships to every high school senior in the county, with extra help for kids who lost homes in disasters. It all came from guilt, she admitted later, that some of her siblings never got that chance. In 2019, she teamed up with Penguin Random House to push the Imagination Library toward a huge milestone: 100 million books by 2025. Then COVID hit, shutting down printing, shipping, and schools. But Dolly refused to pause. She turned to the internet, reading books aloud online to millions of kids when they couldn't leave home. By 2022, her program was serving over 10% of all American children under 5, with nearly 2 million books mailed each month, spreading across 5 countries and growing even faster than before the pandemic. For all her charm, Dolly never hid from controversy. When she wrote Travelin' Through for the 2005 film Transamerica, about a transgender woman's journey, the song earned her an Oscar nomination and hate mail. People threatened her life, but she didn't back down. She donated the song's proceeds to anti-hate education programs in Tennessee schools and said simply, "I get hate mail and threats, but I still believe everyone should be treated with kindness." That one song built classrooms and programs that taught tolerance in places that needed it most. Her personal life was just as complex. Dolly married Carl Dean in a tiny Baptist church in Ringgold, Georgia, on Memorial Day in 1966. She was only 18. They stayed together nearly 60 years until Carl's death in March 2025. In the 1970s, fame nearly tore them apart. Touring had taken its toll, and divorce seemed possible until she turned to counseling and learned how much she valued the quiet man waiting at home. Carl never sought fame, never gave interviews, but he grounded her. Dolly always said their secret was laughter, faith, and space to breathe. But even with a steady marriage, she wasn't immune to heartbreak. In the 1980s, after what she called an affair of the heart with bandleader Greg Perry, she spiraled into depression. It wasn't physical, she said, but it was deeply emotional. And when it ended, she felt like dying. One night, gun in hand, she thought of ending it all, until her little dog Popeye wandered in and pulled her back. She shut herself away, gained 50 pounds, and battled shame. Then, she poured the pain into her music, writing songs like, "Why'd You Come In Here Looking Like That?" It took therapy, prayer, and her family's love to pull her out. She also faced the darker side of the music business. Since the 1970s, she'd been groped and harassed by powerful men. During the Trutta Me Too movement, she finally spoke up, not with anger, but with quiet honesty. She said she had learned to walk away strong. Sometimes that meant making jokes to diffuse a moment. Sometimes it meant changing how she dressed to protect herself. But she never let humiliation define her. Her message to younger women was clear: never lose your joy for someone else's power. Behind the rhinestones and big hair, Dolly came from hard soil. In her 1986 autobiography, she revealed that her uncle's moonshine money paid for her first guitar. Her family was poor but clever. They built their own furniture, grew food, and shared what little they had. She also admitted she used to sneak cigarettes as a teen, hiding them from her religious parents. It was a small rebellion, but it showed the fire under her sweetness. Her health wasn't spared either. In 1984, she had a partial hysterectomy and breast surgery after discovering lumps. She kept it secret for years, afraid the truth would ruin her image. When she recovered, she turned it into a mission, speaking out about early screenings for women who couldn't afford them. She said her survival came from faith and that mountain-born stubbornness that refused to quit. Then came her wildest turn yet. In November 2023, at age 76, she released Rockstar, her loudest, boldest album ever. It sold 127,178 units in its first week in the US, topping 6 Billboard charts and hitting number 3 overall, just behind Drake and Taylor Swift. The album included Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and Miley Cyrus on a new version of Jolene. It sold over 143,000 copies worldwide in that first week, topping charts in Canada and hitting the top 10 in Germany. It was her biggest debut ever, the reward for finally accepting her 2022 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. By March 2025, she had turned her legacy into a new kind of experience. Her tour, Threads, My Songs in Symphony, opened in Nashville with a $5 million production blending live orchestras and her digital presence on massive screens. She didn't appear in person, but her recorded voice told her life story between orchestral versions of Jolene and I Will Always Love You. The show sold out in 15 minutes, tickets averaging $140. And by the time it reached cities like Pittsburgh, Phoenix, and San Diego, critics were calling it a spiritual experience. Then the rumors started. In early 2025, her sister, Frida, posted online, asking fans to pray for Dolly's health. The internet exploded with worry, until Dolly herself appeared on video in October, smiling, saying, "I ain't dead yet." She admitted she'd been battling kidney stones and postponed her Las Vegas shows to recover near Vanderbilt University. A few months later, she stunned everyone again by appearing at the Grammys, performing live and announcing her next memoir. In it, she revealed the truth behind the Elvis Presley story, that his manager wanted her to give up the rights to I Will Always Love You, and she refused. That one decision preserved her royalties for life and changed music history. By 2025, Dolly had sold more than 100 million records and won 11 Grammys, including a Lifetime Achievement Award. Netflix turned her songs into stories in the series Dolly Parton's Heartstrings, watched by millions around the world. And when asked if she'd ever retire, she laughed and said, "As long as I can wiggle, I'll keep going." At 79, she was still writing, still giving, still proving that kindness and grit could build empires, and that no matter how high she climbed, she never forgot the dirt roads that led her there.